Hello, this is NEMYRIALIVE, and we continue our broadcasting from Kiev. And we are very happy and proud that our guest today is retired French general, ex-deputy commander of NATO forces in Europe, and now professor in Paris School of International Relations, Michel Yakovleff. General, hello, thank you so much for being with us today.
Good morning, all.
General, Dzień dobry. General, I'd like to start from the discussion situation around the Russia's-Ukrainian war. And if it is possible, what do you think about real situation on the battlefields? It seems like Russia tried to make more pressure. Let's see what will happen. But anyway, what do you think about the situation of the battlefield?
Yeah, well, please be aware that I don't have access to intelligence. I don't have contacts in the Ukrainian forces or in the Russian forces, by the way, who tell me what's going on. So my impression is from open sources, okay? And my feeling hasn't changed for the last 3 years, basically. Russia is putting on pressure to try to grind down Ukraine, your resistance. So they are seizing kilometers here and there at horrendous cost, and it can last for 120 years, basically. On the current, apparently on the calculations from, open sources that do calculations, at the current rate of advance, the Russian forces would need something like 120 years to reach the Polish border. So now war is not linear and it's not going to last 120 years. But this situation can go on for a very long time, where Russia goes on putting pressure. Ukraine is forced to cede territory at a very slow pace, and making it horrendously costly to the Russian forces, and it can last for some time. No one that I know thinks that the front will crumble, that all of a sudden there'll be a breakthrough, and that the Russians will do a deep penetration. One reason being that they don't have any more assets to do deep penetration. They're short of tanks, armored vehicle. You have destroyed most of their inventory. So even if they punched a hole through the line, they wouldn't have enough to do what the Russians called penetration, in the operational depth. It won't happen. On current trends, it won't happen. So the front line, the terrestrial front line, as long as the Russians put pressure, it will go on moving backwards very slowly. I remember in summer last year when on French TV the talk was Pokrovsk, how long can Pokrovsk last? And I said, it's going to last a number of months. The way it's going to last a number of months. And as far as I know, you're still in Pokrovsk. So it can go on like that for a long time. Now that's the terrestrial front. On the maritime front, you have won the war last year, basically. What remains of the Russian fleet, Black Sea Fleet, is terrorized and in Novorossiysk, and now they're building enlarging the base at Oshamshire in Abkhazia. There's no prospect of them using Sebastopol, and in particular the industrial facilities of Sebastopol, because that's where the maintenance happened. So it's a navy that is short of maintenance and terrified to move out into the open, basically. On the air front, you've had a terrific success Sunday. Congratulations on that one. I don't think you'll be able to redo the same thing again, but I do expect some other form of surprise in 6 months. There'll be another one, and your imagination is we're going to see other big surprises that way. But you're lacking air defense more and more, and it's for lack of missiles. And the Russians have found new supplies, or new ways of production. So on the air front, I think, unfortunately, you're going to go on taking bombs and missiles until or unless your Western friends give you long-range air-to-air missiles, because the few aircraft that you have and that do manage to operate, they could use those things. So I'm trying to put, whenever I'm given the opportunity, I say we should give them our very long-range missiles, because once a number of Russian aircraft start crashing from their launch positions 200 kilometers inside Russian airspace, there'll be much less pilots taking off. Now that will change your life for missiles, but not for drones. And currently I understand that the drones are, they're just swamping your defense. It's as basic as that. Now your defense is improving against drones, but I suspect on the air front, you're going to go on taking destruction for a very long time. Destruction that has no strategic impact. It doesn't change your will to fight. It doesn't degrade your industrial capability. It's just a form of tax. So it can go on like that. An open question is how long can Putin go on at this rate? He needs 30 to 40,000 recruits every month. They are volunteers. They cost they're very expensive. He's running out of money. So I think one day it's going to break. The system is going to break. For that, we need America, and there I'm talking of President Trump, to stop being stupid. In November last year, the Russians were not doing well at all. Their morale was not good at all. And then as soon as Trump was elected, well, all of a sudden, everything turned much better for them. And when you have much better morale, it helps to have more recruits and all that. If only Trump had played seriously about telling Putin, either you stop it, or I'm going to give them every missile that I have, and that's until you play honest with me, I'm going to give them everything they need, and that they're calling for, if I have it in the inventory. That would have taken a bit of optimism out of Russia. And also there's the talk of the very heavy secondary sanctions that the Republicans in Congress are thinking of now in the Senate, that would make oil exports for Russia much more complicated, much more than they are today. That could be a game changer. And yet I don't see Trump picking up the idea. So that's the, if I dare say, tactical situation. In terms of industry, your industry is producing more than half what you need, especially the drones. Now that's the new aspect of warfare. So the race, the industrial race, is not lost by neither Ukraine nor Europe, to the point where we'll always regret not having the missiles in particular that the Americans could give you, but the more it goes, the more you can do without. And when Trump says, I have all the cards, it's not true. Every day he has less cards. Every day you are producing more ammunition, more drones, inventive ways to use them that don't depend on the Americans. Every day that goes, Ukraine is becoming more and more self-sustaining in this war, self-sustaining vis-à-vis America and vis-à-vis the Europeans. It's much better if we are doing our best for you, but the more it goes, the more you're comparing with Russia. I've been very long. Sorry.
No. General, let's come back to some of your thoughts. And do you think that European Union or countries of European Union could satisfy the needs of Ukraine in weapons and missiles and shells? Because, last year we have the weapons from USA. Now we understand the position of Trump, and I'm not sure that it is possible like last year. What do you think about possibilities of Europe?
Well, they're seriously increasing. My understanding is that for the very symbolic, the 155 millimeter shell, Europe is going to produce up to 2 million this year. Not all of them are meant for Ukraine, but they would make a difference. And you're getting more and more artillery. At the same time, you need it less and less, because the drones that you produce have replaced artillery to a large degree. So you're using the artillery for long range fires and you're still using it. But when last year the artillery ratio was a real problem, when Russia could fire up to 10,000 rounds per day and Ukraine 1,000 or 2,000 per day, that was very difficult for your army last year. It's much less the case now. So here again, that's a demonstration where you have found ways to bypass the strangleholds that we had before. So that's for ground combat. For air defense, the missile industry in Europe is really cranking up. Now it's not thousands of them yet, but we can complement or replace Patriot. By the way, for Patriot, the Americans gave you a lot of them, and one reason why they're giving much less of them is that they don't want to deplete their stocks too down. So it's not even really political. If I dare say, it's not even Trump. Even his military advisors, I suspect, are much less enthusiastic this year about giving you thousands of Patriot missiles. Now, the replacement, the equivalent, to a certain degree, the better one, the SAMP-T, is not the same, doesn't have the same stock, but the production line is ramping up. Now, I'm not saying that you'll have all these SAMP-Ts that you would be dreaming of this year, but in the prospect of a longer war going on and going on, in possibly 2 years' time, Europe, now no one wants this war to go on for 2 years, but we've got to go on planning for it. For air defense missiles, sophisticated air defense missiles, to include ones that can stop calibers and to a certain degree Kinjals, the European industry will be able to produce large numbers. And you have found ways to against the drones, the lower quality things. It's just short range artillery. It doesn't cost that much to produce 20 millimeter, 23 millimeter, 30 millimeter guns, caliber 50 guns with and you've developed an artificial intelligence system to target. So when you have swarms of drones, the Iranian ones, or the same produced by the Russians, now it becomes more a question of, do you have enough guns on the way? Because the guns that you have, they do shoot them. So I'm not saying you're becoming impassable, but you're complicating the lives of the other side. That's for sure. So Europe, will it replace America? To a large degree, it's Ukraine that's replacing America. And Europe will go on, hopefully helping.
General, I'm worried that my next question will be too long, but I'll try. Last months, there are more thinking about possible war between Russia and NATO, directly war. And in that case, we are speaking before the NATO summit. And in that case, what do you think about modern war? How this war change? Because sometimes it looks like this war changed dramatically. Do you think that NATO countries and France as well are ready for this new type of war? Do you think that Ukrainian army is important for NATO, like a part of general defense of Europe continent? I understand that it is quite complicated because we know that NATO is an institution, but Ukraine is not a member of NATO. But nevertheless, if we speak about the situation of security in Europe, I think it's much more broader than just institution and just NATO.
Yeah, that's definitely the perception in Europe, and in particular in my country, that NATO is one thing, but it's the defense of Europe in general that involves Ukraine. Now, whether it's a member of the alliance is to a certain degree a technicality. It's too late now, but for sure, Ukraine, your fight is giving the rest of Europe time to prepare for the next one, if I dare say. You are buying time for us, the rest of the Europeans. Not all Europeans see it that way. It's been my thing for the last 3 years. Every time I'm given the opportunity, I'm saying, Ukraine is giving us time to adapt and time to understand. But currently, to go to your initial question, is Europe ready today? No, it's not ready. It's not ready. The militaries are not ready for this type of war. And the population is not ready to accept that basically we are at war. We're not in the fight, but we are in the war. And we're still, in my country, in France, we're still thinking that we can invest a lot in defense and just keep our social security the way it is and all that kind of stuff. No, something will have to give. We've got to change the social model in reality to prepare for war. We're not there yet. Now, we're not in mortal danger because as long as Ukraine is putting up the fight, Russia is not ready to attack us in any case. They're too busy with you. It's not today that Russia is going to reconstitute a second army that could simultaneously attack Estonia, Latvia, or Poland, while having you, while being busy with you. So Europe is not ready now, not capable, but neither is Russia. And that's thanks to you. Now, 3 years ago, I didn't believe 1 minute that Russia would attack NATO territory in the sense of crossing the border with tanks. And not because of Article 5 has a totemic value against the Russians and so on. It's just because, for me, Putin wants to destroy NATO. It's not the same thing as attack a member of NATO. He wants NATO to close, the organization to shut down. America goes back to America, the Canadians, I don't know, and the buildings in Brussels become hospitals or museums, and that's it. Goodbye NATO. We close, just like the Warsaw Pact closed. That's what Putin wants, because after that, he can negotiate bilaterally with every single European member and say, compare with me, and then we start talking, as opposed to we're all together, and Latvia is much more courageous when talking to Russia because it is a member of NATO. If it were completely on its own, it would be a bit more prudent. Now, I didn't believe that Russia would attack NATO territory. Now, I wonder. I've heard the Estonians. I went to Estonia last year, and someone at the Ministry of Defense had a very good idea. He said, if Putin loses the war, if he wins the war in Ukraine, then he'll be encouraged to go on. And the next are us. And if he loses the war, he'll want to take revenge. And revenge against who? Well, us. So for the Estonians, in both cases, it's a win-win or lose-lose situation. It's I don't believe personally that Putin can survive failure over Ukraine. So to a certain degree, it's a moot point. If he's perceived at having lost the war against Ukraine, the regime will crumble. And I think that's why he's going on with this war, because it is a justification of itself. He can't face the moment when 200,000 soldiers will return home from Ukraine. Even if the territories they control now remain under their control. So but the limits of the Russian economy, they're real. They are adapting a lot. They are very resilient, much more than any Western country is resilient. A bit less than Ukraine is resilient. But they can't go on at that scale forever. Even Russia cannot lose 30 or 40,000 men every month for the next 10 years. They're going to run. They're running short of volunteers, even despite the money they're putting up. So it can't last forever. So to go back to your question, is Europe ready? No. Will it be ready in time? Yes, thanks to Ukraine, and assuming that, for example, Macron is actually more listened to than he is now, in particular among the population. Now, that said, if Russia attacked a member of NATO, it would not be the same story as against Ukraine, because we do believe that we have air superiority in particular. So it would make a difference.
Why you think that you have air superiority? I have read this, but it's very interesting. Why I think so.
You are right to challenge it. Well, first of all, the Russian Air Force has taken a lot of losses thanks to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And it has shown that it's incapable of maneuvering in the middle of a bristling air defense, just like you have now. Even if you're short of missiles, you still have enough radars and missiles to be a real threat to the Russians. Whereas the Western air forces, whether right or wrong, they have the numbers of aircraft that you don't have, that Ukraine doesn't have, a large number of aircraft, and also the ammunition, the long-range ammunition and so on. So our perception is that our Air Force will keep their Air Force at a distance, and at least for that, so we won't get the missiles and a number of drones on the head that you're getting. It doesn't mean, though, that our Air Force could operate joyfully into the Russian air defense. We know how to suppress it thanks to Ukraine, because you've been doing it with our weapons. A number of our weapons do get through, the Scalp, Storm Shadow, and so on. They do get through Russian air defense to a certain degree. So we do believe that we have a margin and air power that you don't have, because you don't have much of an air force. So it does change, for us, it does change the calculation. On the ground, well, facing the Russian tactics, I suppose we'll kill as many of them and as fast as you do. As an aside, that's one reason why I'm very much in favor of a strong European force in Ukraine if there is a ceasefire, because not only would it contribute to the ceasefire by providing a guarantee force, a strong maneuver force ready to fight, but in particular, and there I'm being very selfish, because the best school, the best teachers are your army. And for the Europeans, if we have 30,000 soldiers rotating, every 6 months or 8 months in Ukraine, in a peace situation, I mean, there's no shooting going on, in contact with your army and buying drones from you and being trained by your people. And it's not only drones, it's logistics. You have done mass logistics like no Western army has done since 1945. So if 30,000 soldiers rotate through Ukraine, after 2 or 3 years, we will acquire your know-how, your competency, because your army is the most competent in Europe. End of story. Much more than NATO. NATO armies have assets that you don't have, and so on. But for the war of today, at least the war that the Russians are doing, attrition warfare, there's no better place to learn than in Ukraine. And that's where, if I were an American general, I'd tell Trump we absolutely need to be part of that guarantee force. Because if we don't play in Ukraine, in 3 years, the Europeans will be much better than us.
Oh, it's a great idea, by the way.
It's, for me, the real reason, no. The first reason is the political reason, reassurance, guarantee that, if there is a ceasefire, it will not be broken overnight. We've had enough of Minsk and all that kind of mess. So that's the difference. The real political reason. But it has a real operational, technical, tactical, doctrinal training impact, and it would be a real bonus for whichever nation participates.
General, it is a very interesting fact. Who could imagine in 2022 that in 3 years situation will dramatically change? All these 3 years we sent our soldiers and officers to NATO to train. But now you say that we have good experience, which could be used for different others army, European army, and even American army. And in that case, what do you think? What do you expect from next NATO summit? Of course, I know about the increasing for 5% for defense. I know about that,
yeah.
But money is not enough, of course. Yeah. What is your expectation, and how NATO is is ready for this dramatical change of war style, of, using of weapons or changing in air defense force, maybe because of drones and many, many other things?
Yes, the NATO militaries are seriously improving, and much more than people realize. We're not improving enough. It's getting much better. For example, the realization that we need air defense again. That was a bizarre idea a few years ago. Not for an army guy. I was always all for it. But the Air Force guys would say, you don't need it because you have us. And I always told them, when you will meet what I called contested air, we'll see much less of your brilliant aircraft. So we're back to where we are. So now there's the realization that we need more of that, and the production lines are cranking up, and we are going to get more of it. It's not a factor of 10 every year, but it's serious. So our forces are adapting. The real risk to NATO, the only risk to NATO is not Russia, it's Trump. He's the only risk. Everyone other than Trump wants to go on having NATO, agrees that we've got to have a war-fighting NATO, agrees that NATO has got to learn from Ukraine, agrees that NATO has got to better prepare to deter Putin from trying another stupid joke. All that depends on Trump goes on playing. And we don't know. Everyone presumes that the summit will be good enough. Trump will not kill NATO overnight at the summit. Okay. But everyone is concerned. Which means that the idea that Europe should consider itself a power of its own, what the French called strategic autonomy, and that was a toxic word 3 years ago. Now everyone is kind of we've got to consider that we should be able to walk on our own, and that is gaining traction. So for me, it's not the percentage; it's the percentage is a technicality. It's a statement. It's the hard reality is that the European members of NATO and Canada are starting to realize that they've got to think of their own strategy instead of buying it from America. I'm pro-American in general terms. In general terms, you may understand that I'm not very pro-Trump, but then I'm not Putin. The only pro-Trump guy I know of is Putin, by the way.
General, how do you see the role of France's nuclear forces in today's strategic environment?
Crucial, decisive, and the rest of the Europeans are starting to realize. And there's a serious discussion in France, by the way. It's headed by Macron, about having what he calls a nuclear dialogue with all those countries that did not want to talk nuclear with us because they said, well, we have the Americans and your nuclear is small. And now, all of a sudden, well, if it's the only nuclear left, then we need to understand it. And the French perspective is that you are all ignorant. I'm talking of the Germans, the Poles, the Baltics, even the Italians. You are ignorant about nuclear, the use of nuclear threat, the nuclear dialogue. You are ignorant. You've paid no attention to it. You've got to understand. So we're ready to talk nuclear once you've done your homework. And that's what's happening now. People are starting to realize. For example, some people say the French nuclear deterrent is not a massive one. It's not 6,000 warheads like the Russians or the Americans. It's not quite 300. So there's a question of mass. Well, that's a stupid point because, for example, a single nuclear submarine, once it has fired all its missiles, is the equivalent of 300 times Nagasaki. Quite frankly, 300 times Nagasaki is a lot. So, do you need to pulverize the whole planet to send a message? I don't think so. For me, and I'm the only one, I'm doing my best to sell the idea. Maybe thanks to you, I'll sell it a bit better. The whole point of having nuclear deterrence in France is not, if the Russians invade Tallinn, do we go nuclear? It's, if the Russians invade Tallinn and the Poles and the Germans invade half of Kaliningrad, knowing that there's French nuclear deterrence, will Russia go nuclear? The whole question is to put the question back to Putin. That's the whole point of nuclear deterrence. It's not a discussion about as from when would you start shooting. It's a discussion about what will Putin do if we invade half of Kaliningrad and talk of an exchange for half of Estonia. That's where nuclear deterrence, French nuclear deterrence, would contribute to the calculation. It's an example of nuclear deterrence in this case, is that we stop considering that his territory is a sanctuary and ours is not. The whole point of nuclear dialogue in this case, and it's not a question of nuclear parity, the whole point is no, your territory is not more sanctuary than ours. Take your chance, my friend. Because Kaliningrad, when you look at the map, Kaliningrad is very vulnerable. If the Polish army and the German artillery and so on wanted to wipe out Kaliningrad, it would be done very fast. And then what do the Russians do?
General, let me ask the last question, if you have 5 minutes more. Yeah.
Yes. As you see, I'm talking a lot and a lot. So
No.
I've got to give you a little more time.
Not a lot, just brilliant. You say that if Putin could lose the war, how and why Putin would lose this war? I mean, Russia's Ukrainian war.
To be honest, I think this war will be settled by a crash of the Putin regime. And I don't know how. I suspect it would be the military. He can go on. He's gone on much more than I thought, to be honest. So I'm not good at predicting, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not at all good at predicting. What I see is that I don't believe this regime can stay forever. It's not a question of Russia against Ukraine. It's Putin's war. And one day, someone will show him the window, I think. And then everything is open. And I'm not saying it's going to be brilliant, because the real risk behind is a new Russian revolution. And the Russians, as you know, when they do revolutions, they're very good at doing revolutions. I mean, civil wars. There's every chance now for a civil war in Russia. There are something like 17 armies in Russia, with all the militias, the governor militias and Patriot and Wagner, what remains, and the Chechens and all that. 3 ministries have armies. So for me, Russia is close to what Lebanon was in 1973. Mm-hmm. It's littered with small armies, with a number of, as you know, the subjects of the Federation, it's 190 now, depending on whether you put Crimea and the illegally annexed, but basically 190 subjects of the Federation. 188 have very good reasons to hate too, St. Petersburg and Moscow. So when some of them will start declaring independence, like Chechnya tried to do, what will happen? It's not a vision of bliss for me. I call it Yugoslavia Power 10 with 6,000 nuclear warheads. That's the risk. And I think by that time, when we are in that situation, Ukraine will be considered a Zakuski. I'm sorry about that. It will be a sideshow if that horror story starts. So, I don't see military defeat being inflicted on the Russians in Ukraine. You don't have the means. I think one day it will stop. It's been 3 years where the wave after wave. One day someone will say it's got to stop. And the army has been humiliated quite often. The regime doesn't not much to respect them. So my suspicion is that a putsch of some kind is the way this regime will crash. Ukraine needs to live until then to see that day.
Yeah. We haven't another chance, just to stay. General, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Well, congratulations to all of you. I wish I could be more useful than that.
Thank you so much.
Do побачення.